Hello, everyone. I would like to thank everyone today for participating and attending today's webinar. Um, so, um, Today I will first introduce Wallace, and I would like to thank him for attending and assisting me as always. Before we get started, I would like to have him give you information on Lacan. So I will go ahead and have him present that information. So go ahead, Wallace.
Thank you, Janet.
You're welcome.
So what Lacan is Lacan is Louisiana Council's advocacy network. It's a grassroots statewide advocacy network all across Louisiana. So in each region of Louisiana, we have a Lacan leader. And the Lacan leader does things like link you to lawmakers. It links lawmakers, individuals with disabilities, family members together to make positive change in systems serving people with disabilities. The CAN helps people advocate for policies and systems that support inclusion everywhere where people learn, work, live, and play. The CAN also advocates for systems that support children and adults with disabilities to live in their own home and be fully included and be participating members of their local schools and community. The CAN leaders also provide a connection with a regional team of advocates to provide information on proposed policy changes and how these policy changes may affect you and others. And they also provide training and skills to help you effectively advocate for systems change and support you to link you with policymakers. And so, um, if you need to find your Lacan leader or don't know who your Lacan leader is, you can reach out to your Families Helping Families Resource Center, and the staff at Families Help Families can help you connect to your regional Lacan leader. It's free to join Lacan, and they email alerts. When you join, you get an email alert telling you what's happening, what's going on, and then in the email it'll tell you how you can, have the information there with like the policymakers, or if it's a Bessie board, they'll be linked there for them, or if it's with the legislator, they'll be linked in there for them, so you can find them to respond to give them your input on what is being proposed in the email. Again, it's free to join Lacan. And if you're not a Lacan member, we would ask that you join to get the information and share the information so that others can know what's going on in our state. All right. And I'm going to put the link for Lacan in the chat, but it'll also be emailed to you in a follow-up email after this webinar is over. And later today, we'll email that to you. So thank you for giving me your attention to tell about Lacan, and I'll turn it back over to you, China.
Okay, thank you, Wallace. Okay, so today we are pleased to welcome Miss Nicole and Miss Jessica. They are very special guests from Baton Rouge. So they work for the DACE program, which stands for Disability Access and Coordinated Entities. So today they will be sharing information on preparedness for all, including people with disabilities, in emergency planning. Please put your questions in the chat box as we will be monitoring them throughout the webinar. As I said prior, Wallace will be assisting me in monitoring the chat box, and he will also make sure to get the PowerPoint out, as well as certificates and those things out after the webinar. We will be sending out surveys as well. So with that said, I ask that you please give your full attention to these beautiful ladies and help me welcome them to our platform. So, ladies, I give you the floor.
Thank you, China.
You're so
Thank you.
welcome, honey.
I am going to share my screen. Just 1 second. Okay. Oh, sorry. It's gone back. I'm not an expert at this, guys. Let me try
Doing better than
to
I would do. So
redo. I'm sorry. Ah, okay. Am I still sharing it?
no.
Not yet. It went away.
Let me see what I can do. I'm so sorry, guys.
We saw it a few seconds ago, though.
Okay. I apologize. How about now?
Not yet. There we
There.
go. That's it. That's it.
Now we're
Yay.
cooking with something.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's it. Yay.
Thanks, Jessica.
Problem. Okay, so we're the Disability Assessment and Coordination Entity by GOSEP.
And so our expectations for today are active participation. I know we're virtual, but if there's, like China and Wallace mentioned, please, if you have any questions, any comments, definitely drop them in the chat. We're a small enough group too that if we need to, we can unmute. But ask those questions, share your experiences. We know that some of the solutions and some of the gaps in planning, we need to crowdsource some of that information and share what we've learned, trial and error, share what's worked, share what hasn't, share some of the needs that we still have. And this is also talking about sharing. It's meant to be shared with other people who are not here. We want to make sure that we're prepared, that we're preparing our families, but we're also helping to prepare our neighbors and our friends.
Okay, so like I said, we're the Disability Assessment and Coordination Entity, or DACE. We're through the Governor's Office of Homeland Security and Emergency Preparedness. That is GOSEP. And we help in two different ways. So two main parts of DACE: preparedness, and this is where we do the regional trainings and meetings, and they can be tailored based on need or desire. The second part is the response, and we're kind of learning more as we go with each storm. We learned a lot during Winter Storm Fern, and now with the current floods and Avoyelles and St. Landry, we're learning more to our response. So that could be deployment to sheltering environments, and that doesn't necessarily limit us to shelters. That could be shelters run by the state. That could be church shelters. That could be people sheltering in their homes. So what is emergency preparedness? It gets thrown around a lot, but do we really know what it is? It's making plans for all possible emergencies or disasters so we can minimize the impact and help ourselves. We're all about personal preparedness. So we need to help ourselves, our families, and our communities so we can recover faster. And it should be something that we talk about all year round. We hear a lot about it, like June to November, hurricane season, but it kind of leaves us in a weird space, the winter time where we experience those winter storm ferns or the early tornadoes and flooding and things like that. So it should be an all year round effort. Why is it important to prepare? Disasters are relatively unexpected. We can hear that we have a lot of rain coming, but do we know the totality of it? I use St. Landry as a good thing, a good example. So it flooded in Avoyelles. That water has to go somewhere. So it's traveling down to St. Landry. It's hard to fathom blue skies, the weather's okay outside, it's hot, but it's sunny. So we don't think of flooding during sunny times. And we also, Nicole mentioned yesterday, had an earthquake in northern Louisiana sometime this week or last week,
Last
Nicole?
year, last
Yeah.
or yeah.
So I would never put earthquakes with Louisiana, but it happens and climate's kicking up.
Mhm.
Emergency personnel may be overwhelmed. We have that thought that somebody can get us if we need to go to the hospital or things like that, but that's not always accurate. Lives, health, and the environment are in danger, but ultimately planning keeps people safe and it helps ease the anxiety of planning too.
Okay, so when we talk about disasters, in South Louisiana, obviously we're hyper focused on hurricane season. But this list right here shows us that we've got, a plethora of things that we need to be prepared for. And most of these things don't have a season. So we can anticipate hurricane season, but are we really anticipating some of these other disasters or emergencies on this list? And we know that this is not exhaustive. Like Jessica mentioned, we don't have earthquakes on here because when we created this list, we certainly wouldn't have thought that that needed to be on our radar. Um, but one of the things you'll notice on here that's kind of separated is home fires. This is a huge topic that we need to address with our community and with the disability community, but also with the aging community as well. We know that people with disabilities and aging related complications are at greater risk from dying in a house fire due to, slower reaction time, slower physical and cognitive reactions as well. So this is something that we need to pay attention to in addition to some of the other maybe kind of newsworthy like earthquakes, tornadoes, flooding, that sort of thing.
And Red Cross has said that they typically respond more to home fires than any other disaster.
Mhm. And so some of our statistics about the aging and disability community in disaster related issues is that we know there's a gap in the planning at the federal, state, and local level for the aging and disability communities. They're often left out. And because of that, we're seeing higher displacement rates for those who are disabled. They're 2 times more likely to be displaced after or by a natural disaster. And those who are displaced or, displaced from their homes are 21%, 4 times more likely to never return home, which is 21% of those people. That I'm kind of muddled those statistics, but um, so we know though that because of displacement, people are often inappropriately institutionalized. And once someone is institutionalized, we know that's incredibly difficult to walk back. It's incredibly difficult to get back into the community. And that institution is often not their preferred community or place of living. Also, post disaster, in addition to inappropriate institutionalizations, people who are aging or who have disabilities are more likely to experience financial exploitation due to scam offers. And we are all highly exposed to scams through a cell phone and email. And they're very believable too. It's very difficult to discern what's real and what's not. So,
As well as the construction scams that we see after every disaster.
mhm.
So ultimately, we have a responsibility to support the health, safety, and overall well-being of ourselves and our loved ones. Open discussion. In Louisiana, we know that we're at risk for natural disasters, and we know that preparedness saves lives. So why are we not preparing? And you can list some answers in the chat.
So this is your opportunity to participate, and this is where our brainstorming starts. So we have to look at some of the barriers and challenges to preparing so we can kind of figure out what are some of our solutions and ways to tackle that. Karen put cost of preparing. Absolutely. Many families are living week to week. Yes. Ignorance, for example, to the less common disasters. That's right. We're just not aware because we don't experience them as often. Busy, working multiple jobs. Absolutely. Feeling that the risk of an emergency actually happening and actually affecting us is too low to warrant the time and emotional cost, let alone the money. Absolutely. Because it happens to other people. That's a different part of the state. That won't happen here. It hasn't happened here. Waiting, putting it off. Absolutely. And I think in Louisiana, we kind of have a cultural relationship with weather, that we just kind of it just kind of is, and we just deal with it when it comes. But that's really not preparing. That's not a great way to prepare, is just kind of dealing with it as it comes. Thank you guys for putting all of that in the chat. Jessica, you're muted.
Okay, I lost myself on the screen, so I couldn't see. Sorry. What impacts people's ability to prepare? Trust. We have to have trust with others, with governmental entities. Sometimes there's not trust there. And we don't trust our news sources because sometimes we're not watching the reliable sources. So we get a lot of issues and problems when we're following unreliable sources. Financial means, we all know that's a challenge. Isolation, people with disabilities and older adults self-isolate a lot. It's a lonely world. The ability, people may not have the physical or mental capacity at that time to prepare. If everything in life is kind of chaotic, then preparedness kind of falls to the wayside. And housing is always a challenge for people around the country. So everyone has a role in emergency preparedness.
So what we're going to do now is we're going to look at everyone's role. Like what part does everyone play? That way we have a better understanding of who does what, so we can build out a more robust, better informed preparedness plan. And so this slide right here talks about the whole community approach. And so this is something that FEMA coined, but it's incredibly useful, especially considering the current state of emergency response and at the federal, state, and local levels. We need to look at who's in our community and what's in our community. So the whole community approach really does that. It kind of looks to see what the community's resources are, including people, organizations, and supplies. But the cornerstone of all of that is relationships and social connection. And so we know that the people that we do business with, that we socialize with, that we engage with in blue skies are the people that we're more likely to turn to before, during, and after a disaster. So that idea of community will come into play as we kind of talk throughout this presentation, and really looking at the resources that our whole community has that we can utilize to be better prepared.
So take a moment and think about what communities you and your family belong to.
So drop those. Oh, that's okay. Drop those in the chat. And we want to think about community kind of in a flexible way. So community can come in any form and fashion. Like we mentioned, it's people that we may do business with, that we socialize with and do, recreational activities, people that we live nearby. So that's when we start to think about community. So maybe drop some of those in the chat. What are your communities or your family's communities that you're involved with? Live in a rural area. Work community, church community, neighborhood? Absolutely.
It's really hard sometimes to find community in rural areas.
Work, city, church, community? Absolutely, yes. Thank you guys. Yeah, we need to, even things like, okay, online communities. That's a great one. Hobbies, video games. Absolutely. Online mom groups. Yeah. Okay. Thank you guys for putting that in the chat. So we talked about, kind of looking at that whole community and what's available in our communities and who's available in our community. We also need to look at what the government's role is in disasters. And so you'll see that from this slide, the government kind of takes a high level, kind of macro approach. And they look at developing, practicing, and improving emergency plans, ensuring that emergency responders have adequate skills and resources, and provide services to protect and assist citizens. But this is helping the most people in the most efficient way at a large scale.
So developing personal preparedness plans. It used to be the first 72 are on you, but now it's plan as though no one is coming for you, and the first days are on you. The emergency services aren't allowed to go back out on the roads with a certain miles per hour. It's like 39 to 45 or something. So we really have to plan completely solely to live by ourselves for 4 days.
Mhm. And so some of the common misconceptions that people, use to inform their preparedness plans, we wanted to make sure that we talk those through, because when we're making a preparedness plan, we want to make sure that we have the most accurate, up-to-date information. And so a big one, particularly for our community and those that use medical equipment, is I'm on the electric company's priority list so I can get my utilities turned on first. Speaking from experience, our child uses medical equipment that, relies on electricity. When you leave the hospital, they always tell you, make sure you check in and register with your electric company so they know you're there and you can be a priority turn on. And so we don't want to discourage people from doing that. It's definitely worth doing, but it can't be part of your preparedness plan, because when the utility companies are looking to connect a whole community that's been impacted by a disaster, they're not thinking about, as Jessica calls them, the onesies and twosies that are out there in, the neighborhoods. They're really looking at, again, kind of going back to that governmental thing, connecting the most people in the most efficient manner as quickly as possible. And so they're going to look at, where are the hospitals? Where are the grocery stores and gas stations? Where are the hardware stores? Those are the resources that people need to get a community back online as quickly as possible. So while we wouldn't, like I said, discourage you from doing that, that can't be part of your plan. The other one is, I signed up on the registry as a resident with disabilities so the city knows where I'm at. A list and a registry, again, cannot be your plan. There are parishes, there are cities that do have registries for their citizens that have disabilities or access and functional needs. Certainly find out about those. But when you go to put your name on a list, and we talk about this a little bit later in the presentation, make sure that you understand what that registry or what that list does. Because here in Lafayette Parish, we have Lafayette Now. It's an amazing messaging system that we just got online this year. We can indicate that, okay, maybe we are a person or a household with someone with a disability, but it doesn't do anything for us in that particular service. It really only tells the city about who lives in their city limits. What assets do they need to line up to be prepared if we were to show up? It doesn't mean that they're coming to get us. It doesn't mean that they really know where we're at. It just means that we live within the city limits, or in, Lafayette Parish. So it's just super important that that registry is not your plan, because things can go wrong, and then you get left behind and left in a very dangerous situation. The one of the most common ones too, especially like we talked about here in Louisiana, and that cultural relationship that we have with weather, is my family has never left for a storm and we've always been fine. That may be true, and that's a blessing. But we know, and your area in Calcasieu Parish obviously has been hit by significant storms. We know that the weather is intensifying, our patterns are intensifying. At times, it's unpredictable. Avoyelles Parish, I don't think, could have ever anticipated receiving 30 inches in such a short period of time. And that's an area that generally does not flood and is still sitting underwater. So we know weather's intensifying, and it's rapidly intensifying. So our planning time has shrunk. And this is kind of going back to what we talked about. Lists don't save lives, preparedness does. So having a really good preparedness plan for you and your family is key. And it may mean, kind of marrying your own personal resources with what's available locally. That makes sense, but not solely relying on, okay, somebody's coming to get me, so I don't need to make any plans. That's unsafe. And just again, reiterating, when you put your name on a list, making sure that you understand what this does and does not do for you or your family member. Just being very clear about that.
And it's okay to ask if you're unclear, if they're using it just for planning purposes. A lot of emergency managers like to know how many alternate transportation vehicles they need, how many wheelchairs they need in shelters or spaces they need to accommodate different things. But it's okay to ask it, and it's okay for them to give you that information. So creating a personal support network. We need at least 2 people to check on us. And we need to check on 2 different people. So who are you calling and who is calling you? And you can put some of those answers in the chat. Also, do you have a trusted person who lives out of town that you can evacuate to or that could help you during recovery?
Somebody
Even
said,
if,
I'm sorry.
oh no, you can go ahead.
I was going to say, when we asked who would you be calling and who would call on you, my parents, family, friends, coworkers. And Brenda, we can talk about emergency shelters for people with special needs, a friend and family members. I call my elderly parents and they would call me if for some reason I wouldn't. I have a sister that lives in a different state. Absolutely. And that's really important too, to have a contact outside of your area. Because if everyone you're contacting and is contacting you is in the impacted area, then it's difficult. You can't, evacuation, sharing of resources, support becomes difficult when everybody's impacted by the same disaster. So having that kind of out of area contact is very important as well. Check on my kids, grandmother, and my best friend. My coworkers and I have a group chat. We check on each other. That's fantastic. That's that community, right? That work community. I always appreciate questions like this because my default is to think about people in my household, but that isn't the best for this situation. Right. Thank you for that.
So I have a sister that lives in Colorado, and she's lived here probably half her life. So she's familiar with different big roads and things like that. And so when she watches national news, she can get some of that information, and she gets some of the information that we don't get because maybe our power's out and the internet's slow, but phone calls are working. So she's helpful in that aspect. That's some really good answers, though. Okay, so you can go ahead.
Okay, so creating a communication plan. This is where we lean into those communities. This is where we lean into kind of that who are you contacting and who's contacting you. This is just making sure everybody's aware of everything that's going on. But you're to contact people, you want to make sure that you let them know where you are, any needs you may have, and how they can check on you. And this is the opportunity to practice ahead of time before the disaster. So you've created your network. You have a communication plan, kind of old school prayer tree, right? 2 people you're calling and 2 people that are calling you. This is again leaning into that whole community. What resources and people are there? But this, like I said, is the opportunity to practice this because we don't want to start trying to communicate or figuring out what we need to let people know in a very stressful situation. This is when we call ahead and say, these are my needs. This is what I may need in a stressful situation. This is what I use during blue skies or when things are going fine. That way, people know what you need and where you're at. Um, if giving information during a stressful period is difficult, then that may be an opportunity to figure out alternate forms of communication. Maybe it's typed up, so you can, in the instance where you have to leave your home, you can hand it to someone. So that's all there. The information is there for somebody to help you and to help support you.
So a checklist for people with disabilities. Inventory your belongings in your home, especially your medical equipment. You'll hear this a lot in just general preparedness to take pictures of things. But when you have medical equipment and it can be lost or something like that in flooding, you really want to have pictures of the equipment and maybe pictures of the barcode or just labels. Label your go bag, your medical equipment and pet supplies with your name and contact information. And Nicole often talks about color coding the cords to the equipment. So you have matching and you just don't have all different chargers and nobody knows what goes to what.
It's
It's
we've dealt with medical equipment with our child for a number of years, and my husband still gets confused by the random black cords that come with all of this equipment and what goes to what. So it's incredibly helpful to have, a color sticker on the cord, maybe it's red, and then, a color red sticker on the device that it goes to. And it's just helpful when you've got hands in the pot that are trying to help and everybody's moving and there's just a lot of confusion and stress. It's just an easy way to keep things organized.
great. And if you use medical supplies, make sure you have extras or backup batteries if you're able to have those backup batteries. Know your medical supply company's emergency prepare plans for delivery and supply distribution. So, like for Nicole's child's DME, they get supplies, I think you said 7 days ahead of time.
Sometimes it's 7 days. It depends on what supply company. Sometimes it's 7 days and sometimes it's 2 weeks worth of supplies that they will front us.
We didn't, for my sons, we didn't have that. So we just kind of had to stash what we could to the side. And luckily we had double insurance. So we were able to get a little extra. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm moving slides and I don't even know how I'm doing it. Sorry, guys. Checklist for people with disabilities. So if you live in an apartment or work outside your home, ask management what the emergency plan is for the building. That's important. A lot of people just have standard ones that they created or they use to check off a box for just licensing purposes, but finding out what their emergency plan is. Program cell phones with emergency contacts and have backup power for the phone. Do you have one of those little boxes? I say little, but they're pretty heavy. The alternate chargers that you kind of plug in. And then I like to have a paper copy of all important phone numbers. That's really important if your phone dies.
And so, what would you add to this checklist? Because we know that this is not complete. We know this is not exhaustive to address all of the unique needs that the disability community faces. So, is there something that you guys would add to this checklist or that you do to prepare for your family? Drop that in the chat if you do, so we can all share our ideas and tips and tricks. For sure, I would need to add things like pet food and pet cages. We have two cats, and so it would be a nightmare if we just had to scoop them up and throw them in the car. Um, it
have World War III on your vaccine.
It would be horrible.
First thing I need to
Goodness.
add is snacks.
Yeah, for sure. Because
And
snacks.
our snacks look very different than Bambi's and Nicole's. We have traveled a few times together and we're like, why are you eating that? That's what you brought?
Yeah, right. We question each other's snack choices. But
Question it
whatever makes
hard.
you happy, you know? So in the chat, you guys have put special dietary needs. Absolutely. Meeting place, flashlights, gas, food, comfort items. That's a huge one. You know, letting people choose, everyone choose their own comfort items. So they've got something that can help make a fairly stressful and sometimes chaotic situation a little bit easier. Things to help with anxiety for pets and kids and myself, like games, batteries, surge protectors for equipment, and extra batteries for specialized equipment. Absolutely. I think that's a really good point too. Understanding the internal and external batteries on some of this equipment and the charging needs. There's just this assumption that we all, because may have medical equipment in our home, we have an understanding of, the lifespan of the battery. That's not true. And when you're dealing with multiple devices, it gets, it kind of gets lost in the shuffle. So that's something during blue skies or when things are going well to try to figure out and maybe make a note of it on the device. Like you've got 3 hours unplugged. This, particular thing will run. So you can have an idea of how you need to plan, maybe in an evacuation. So in the car, you're prepared for, okay, we've got 3 hours before we have to start, trying to charge this thing. Battery powered fan, that's a great one. I always pack a notebook and pen to be able to note contacts with FEMA contractors and other help. Absolutely. Games, card games, ready to eat food and snacks that do not need power to prepare. Yes, yes. And things that we want to eat. We're joking about snacks, but when you see the list of non-perishable items, the first thing that comes to mind is like old school, like Vienna sausage. Those would not be eaten at our house. But for some reason, that's like that kind of go-to hurricane thing. I know Jessica said they would be eaten at their house.
Again, where the
Um,
snack slams come in.
China, you
um, yeah, like I was saying, I was about to say, I know that you had said that we were making jokes and stuff about snacks, but a lot of things that we usually do not think about, but one of the things that I always have like prepared is some of my old family photos that I
Mm.
really don't want to lose in a storm. I have those tucked away so that way if I have to leave in an emergency, I have those where I can just grab them and stick them in my suitcase and be able to go so that I don't lose those because a lot of people don't really think about those things. So that way, if we decide that we leave and evacuate and things happen and you do end up losing your home, you have those old family photos that you've left with and they're not lost during the storm.
I think that's an incredibly powerful point, China. And that's something that we could and probably all should do. And when things are okay, blue skies again, every family member getting an opportunity to say, okay, if we had to leave, what's the one thing we wouldn't want to lose? If we couldn't come back or if our home was destroyed, what would be the one thing we wouldn't, or multiple things that we wouldn't want to lose? And that gives everybody an opportunity to really kind of take that inventory, look around, because knowing that that's back at home and you've potentially lost it increases the stress of an already stressful situation if you have to evacuate and leave your home. Thank you for
Right,
sharing.
right.
Wallace said, my dog, absolutely. You need to make sure we bring our pets. And that's one thing that a lot of people will say, okay, I won't leave without my pets, or there's some misunderstanding about how pets are accommodated. And actually, our state leads the nation in accommodations and preparedness plans for pets. So at the end of this presentation, we're going to give you guys a a QR code so you can contact your Office of Emergency Preparedness for your parish and ask those questions. Okay, if I'm evacuating with my dog, what do I need to do to be prepared? And what do you offer? What preparedness do you guys have in place? Or what plans do you have in place for that kind of situation? Thank you all so much for that discussion.
Yes, so we talk about a go bag and a stay kit and just the differences between the two. And the difference is one you bring with you and one stays. So if you gather supplies in advance, it's always easier. Making the transition, just grabbing it, putting it in the car. And many of the items needed for your kits are already in your home. You should have 3 to 5 days of water, non-perishable food items that you will eat, and medications for you, your family members, and pets. And this is where I like to highlight any of the over-the-counter medicines. I know in weather events, my migraines kick up. And so I like to have ibuprofen and Tylenol in stock. And then our family has awful allergies. And sometimes during the rain, stuff kicks up in the air. And so we have to use allergy medication. It's recommended to have 3 gallons of water per person per day. And you should include water for pets.
And one of the suggestions that was given to us in a previous training by someone who was attending said that, because this isn't necessarily 3 gallons of consumable water that you would drink. It's things like flushing toilets, washing hands, that kind of thing. So it's kind of the per day usage per person. So one lady that attended our training, so what she does is she takes those empty water jugs or empty milk jugs that she's cleaned out and just fills them with tap water and puts that under the bathroom sink. And that's something that she can use for washing hands and flushing toilets. Definitely not something that you want to drink, but just for other water usage, that extra water. And that cuts down on the cost too, and having to bring that from the store and figure out the logistics of all that.
And an example, so one of the winter, it wasn't a winter storm, it was in the winter, but my mom lived in an older house and the lightning hit some of her pipes. And so that was an emergency. And so I am so sorry. So that was an emergency. So she was able to use those gallons of water to flush her toilet and to clean some of her dishes, just so they didn't sit there.
Yeah. And we have here, what would you put in your go bag and stay kit? And we've kind of discussed that. Some of the ideas that you guys put in the chat are definitely things that would be in that go bag stay kit. And like Jessica said, it's just really a matter if you're staying or going. And sometimes your stay kit, because you're sheltering in place, turns into a go kit because there's a mandatory evacuation or you figured out, okay, I have to go. So it's just really where are you using it? So thank you all for that input. Jessica, you're muted.
Sorry, there's a question in the chat. I have 3 cats and 1 dog. How much water should I bring for them?
I think that's really kind of looking at, okay, what do you use in blue skies? What do they need when, how much water do you use to sustain them when you're home? Because it's the water usage is going to be the same. So just monitor that. But a gallon or 2, it can't hurt to put aside per day. But our 3 cats and a dog, how much do they drink in a kind of a regular day, if that makes any sense? I don't know if I was clear.
Yes, and size-wise, because Nicole has a smaller dog and mine is quite large. So they may consume different amounts.
Okay, so what we've done is we have created tip sheets that are divided by quarter. And part of that was because we're also doing some trainings with support coordinators, support provider, home and community-based support providers, service providers. And so we know that they do quarterly visits. But we also looked at this. Whoa, where'd they go, Jessica? I'll keep talking. The tip sheets are divided by quarters. And so part of the reason is, okay, we want them to be used by support coordinators and service providers, but also it's easier for us as families and individuals with disabilities to kind of look at this in bite-sized chunks. Because when we talk about preparing for disasters and we think back to that list of all the different types of disasters, it becomes a huge task. And like somebody mentioned in the chat, when you're trying to live day by day, week by week, it's difficult to figure out, okay, how do we squeeze in something else? Something that's really based on the what if. So what we did was we divided it by quarter, and each quarter has a discrete task to accomplish. We also tried to line it up with kind of seasonal stuff. So the first quarter is January through March, and it's creating an emergency plan and really looking at, okay, making that decision before the disaster of what's your trigger point? When do you stay and when do you go? And that's in those situations where maybe there's a voluntary evacuation. Certainly when you have a mandatory evacuation, you need to listen to that. The Office of Emergency Preparedness understands the magnitude of evacuating a whole community, and they don't take that lightly. And so when they're saying you need to leave, you need to leave. But going back to the quarters, that first quarter, January through March, is creating an emergency plan. And quarter two, which we'll go over in just a bit, is really creating that go bag and stay kit. And so we'll look at the breakdown of that. So here on the screen, Jessica has quarters 3 and 4, and it talks about creating that communication plan. So this is during, you'll see that quarter 3 obviously is during hurricane season. You really want to make sure that your communication plan is ironed out and that you have good contact and a good plan with those people that you'll be contacting and that will be contacting you. And then quarter 4, October through December, that's kind of you would almost think that would be our wind down of the year, even though we're seeing more significant winter weather. But this is that opportunity to revisit that plan, kind of look back what you had in place. Did you use your plan? Were there some gaps? Were some things that you could do better with? And also, this is the opportunity to check the expiration dates on the things that you put in your stay bag and go kit. And also to kind of revisit the year. We know medical conditions change. Relationships change. So maybe that person that was in your communication plan is not your friend anymore. You need to make sure that you have somebody who is, that you're still in relationship with to contact. So it's an opportunity to revisit all of those things. And at the bottom here, you'll see there's some things that you can do all year long. It's putting aside small bills, small bits of cash for when power outages don't allow for the use of debit cards and credit cards. Getting involved in your community preparedness activities or trainings. You guys in Calcasieu Parish have a training coming up in August, on August 15th. Actually, your parish Office of Emergency Preparedness is partnering with us and a number of other community organizations to put this on. And it's going to be, like I said, on August 15th from 10 to 1 at the Martin Luther King Jr. Community Center. We're going to send that out through Families Helping Families. They'll share it, and the Office of Emergency Preparedness will also be sharing that, but I just kind of wanted to give you a heads up. So.
Okay, so this is just a more detailed quarter 2, and it's April through June, creating a go bag and a stay kit. The difference is just one stays, one goes. Everyone's will look very different. So some supplies that your family needs and has may look different than your neighbors. Supplies can be stored in a travel bag or a plastic tote. So some water, pack 1 gallon per person per day, add more for pets, and have at least a 3-day supply. A 2-week supply is ideal. That's a lot. So just getting a little at a time. We know money's tight for everyone. So Bambi will add like a gallon or 2 to her list per trip. And it adds up. So food, pack at least a 3-day supply of canned and dried foods and other non-perishables. I have just discovered the packages of the dried fruit, and my family eats fruit frequently. So I think we're going to try that. Juices, soups, and high protein shakes may be particularly helpful for older adults. Also, the little electrolyte packs. We know sometimes older adults don't consume all of the water and liquids that they need. So those electrolyte packs really come in handy. A manual can opener, flashlights, waterproof matches, knives, resealable plastic bags. So those are like the Ziploc bags, tin foil, and disposable utensils. No one wants to try to wash dishes when it's hot, and no one has patience.
And so this is, oh, go ahead, Jessica.
You can go ahead.
Okay, this is just a continuation of the list. And some of these things you're going to see on your general emergency preparedness or like kind of go bag, stay kit lists. And so what we've done is we've put this here, but we've also created some tip sheets. We're going to be in this right here, and everything we're presenting to you will be sending out to all of the attendees. So you'll have this. This isn't just for this, for this time. But we've got tip sheets that are specific to certain disability categories. So maybe those individuals who are blind or have low vision, those who have chronic, medical conditions, maybe those who are aging. We've got some additional considerations for those individuals because we know they're going to present some unique challenges and they're going to have some unique needs in a disaster scenario. So this right here, like I said, is just kind of a list of things to consider just for the household. And then we've got those additional lists for disability specific needs. But you'll see here, we kind of go over the pet stuff again, which is super important. Also, photos of your pets. That was something that was recommended from the state level. So that way, if somebody gets mixed up, if somebody gets lost, they can match the human to their pet with good photo records.
We're big fans of the microchips, if you're able to get your pet microchipped.
Brenda, you asked, how do we get the tip sheet list, disability specific? We're going to be sending those out. And I think, Jessica, did you drop that in the chat at the beginning?
I did. It's all the way at the top.
Okay.
But I can try to relink it.
I'll lean into you on the technology stuff.
I'm not doing so hot with these,
like
the movement, these slides.
You're doing better than I would. But I think we can go to the next slide too.
And I'll be emailing it out in a follow-up email too. I pasted it in there so they'll get it that way too.
Perfect. Thank you, Wallace. And so just to kind of round this out, this is the documents. We talked about kind of even those photos, like keeping them all in one place. This is the same concept with those documents. We want to make sure that when you leave home, you've either got, you've got everything you need just in case they get destroyed back home. There's been tips that have been shared with us where you can scan in important things and email them to yourself. Maybe even keeping copies at, a trusted person's home that lives outside of your area. There's a number of different ways to keep these documents safe, but there's got to be some effort to keep them together and then to keep them in some sort of watertight container or storage.
Okay, things to consider before an emergency event. How would you prefer for others to keep in touch with you? Have any of your emergency contacts changed? People change numbers all the time. What is your understanding of the upcoming event? That's super important because a lot of people don't have like traditional cable, so we're not having the weather channel, the news channel on all the time. So where are you getting it from? Are you getting it from reliable sources? Are you evacuating? Have an honest discussion about access to transportation. This is a lot of people say, okay, well, my so-and-so is going to provide transportation. Well, are they reliable all the time, or do you have to change plans? Unreliable transportation can create an emergency within an emergency. Do you have all necessary supplies for either staying or leaving? Remember the 4-day rule and don't rely on lists.
And kind of revisiting that transportation piece, I think one of the important things to remember is that planning for transportation is going to look a little bit different, obviously, than blue skies. We know that evacuation traffic can be intense. At the bare minimum, you can plan for it to take 4 times longer than it would in blue skies. So a trip that would take you an hour, bare minimum, you should plan for 4 hours. And so that's where, really looking at being honest about how roadworthy that vehicle is incredibly important. And do you have the gas? Are you able to maintain your health during that trip? That kind of all falls within that transportation piece in your planning process.
The things to consider after an emergency: what has changed for you and your family since the event? Do you have the needed supports? And this is a good time to have the conversations if you have skilled nursing at home, if you have direct support workers, what their emergency preparedness plans are, and how that will affect you. And how quickly would you be able to get that back in place after the disaster? Have any of your supports, such as providers, been affected? That includes like durable medical equipment companies, doctor's offices, things like that. Has your home been affected? And this is really difficult for a lot of our families because we have a lot of times chaotic times in our lives. And so we may look at the big picture and say, everybody's safe, everybody's sound, we have the supports, but we may not address that hole in the roof or the slow leak or things like that. So we need to be mindful of those too. Do you have any unmet needs like supplies? And how can you get those if you don't?
Wallace put a great recommendation in the chat about traveling in groups with more than one auto. That's a really great way to, when you look at your community, you look at your supports, really kind of pooling your resources in that way. And maybe it's just company and security and guidance. It helps to have other people with you. Absolutely. Thank you for that, Wallace.
So here's our QR code that you can scan. It will give you the link to all of the emergency preparedness offices. And so you'll be able to find yours. And I think it's also helpful to have it on hand in case you are evacuated into another parish to be able to access theirs as well.
And it's great just to give them a call to let them know, hey, look, I live in your community. My family is in your community. What supports do you offer? What can I plan for? Because we can't build out a good, robust plan unless we know what some of the local supports are. And being able to have those conversations is pretty powerful for them as well. Our hope is that they will listen and consider the needs of the disability community, but they don't know if we don't talk to them about it.
That's a great point. Someone in a different training said that it's all about education. I think when people with disabilities are not included in the planning, some of it is just due to a lack of education about the topic. So really educating them about your family, because that's their community too.
Mm-hmm.
So how can you stay in touch? This is the link for the GOSEP trainings. It's in STEMS. And then we also have our website, which we like to have up-to-date information on our trainings and such. And we also are present on Facebook. If you follow us on there, sometimes we share things that are going on disaster-wise or preparedness-wise. And this is us.
Mhm.
Bambi, I'm sure all of you know, but I am Jessica and that's Nicole.
And this is our QR code for our evaluation for today's training. Please, 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 we would greatly appreciate it if you guys would take the time to fill this out. It helps. We sit down after every training and look at the feedback and really take it to heart. And we're going to continue doing this work, but we want to make sure that we're providing good, high quality information to our community that's useful and meaningful. So please, if you wouldn't mind, take the time to fill that out to let us know how we did, but also some things that we can plan to train on in the future. So thank you all so much for the time that you spent with us today. We really appreciate this, and we really appreciate all the participation from everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, ladies.